I want to remind the House of the key points made by my honourable friend, the Shadow Transport Secretary, who called for urgent action by the government. He said, quite rightly, the challenge is no longer abstract, but now is a very real and devastating reality. These were all important points, and I believe the contributions reflected members' deep concerns about the climate emergency. Sincere views are held across the House about the enormous challenge we now face. It is interesting that there is also an emerging consensus in this House, among the public and among the business community, about both the scale of the issue and the need for an urgent response. So, Mr. Speaker, what is needed now, above all, is a plan for determined action. The government has a working majority, and it is quite clearly the duty of ministers to address this challenge and to address it as a matter of urgency. However, the question now facing the House is whether the government has the political will to rise to this challenge, or whether ministers will continue to fail to acknowledge the scale of the task we now face. As my honourable friend said, so far the record is clear, and I'm afraid it is one of the government's failure to step up to the challenge we now face. Both the Coalition and indeed the last two Conservative administrations have presided over rising carbon dioxide emissions from transport, due largely to increased pollution from road vehicles. At the same time, rail fares have increased dramatically, hundreds of bus services have been cut, and indeed walking and cycling growth is flatlining, with the government missing its own targets to increase active travel. Mr. Speaker, this failure to tackle emissions at a time of climate crisis is quite simply unacceptable. What is needed now is a completely and utterly different approach, and it is clear from the progress being made by other countries, the Labour mayors of our great cities, and indeed the Welsh Government, that investments in public transport, in walking and cycling works and delivers real and tangible change and benefits. Investing to cut carbon dioxide emissions is not only desirable, it is absolutely essential. So, Mr. Speaker, I look forward to the Minister responding to these points, and I would urge him to press his colleagues in the Treasury for the necessary resources, investment and for real incentives for behaviour change, both for drivers to scrap polluting vehicles and to encourage far greater use of public transport and far more walking and cycling.
Aye.